Well, thanks for the introduction, and I'm really happy to be here on a web conference, even though we do make products, phones, smartphones. So I'll give you a bit of context on what we do. And first of all, je suis très content de venir ici, and that's kind of all the French I will give you today, because that's kind of all I know. So I didn't start this journey myself as somebody who would, end up running a phone company. So one of the things I would like you to get through in this presentation is to really look at how, how that how can it happen that somebody who doesn't have in mind to start a phone company actually ends up running a phone company, and what what kind of stuff you run into if you want to set up a company. But first of all, we're at a web conference, and I'm really always intrigued by the fact that we look at the digital world as being only digital, whereas all the bits and bytes we see has a whole world of minerals, mines, factories behind it to make that digital world happen. And I'd like to show you one little video that explains really well, and it's one of my favorite videos that explains really well how the supply chain behind the scenes of our products actually works.
Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. The wood from which it's made, for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron ore. This black center, we call it lead, but it's really graphite, compressed graphite. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it comes from some mines in South America. This red top up here, the eraser, bit of rubber, probably comes from Malaya, where the rubber tree isn't even native. It was imported from South America by some businessmen with the help of the British government. This brass ferrule, I haven't the slightest idea where it came from, or the yellow paint, or the paint that made the black lines, or the glue that holds it together. Literally thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who might hate one another if they ever met. When you go down to the store and buy this pencil, you are in effect trading a few minutes of your time for a few seconds of the time of all those thousands of people. What brought them together and induced them to cooperate to make this pencil? There was no commissar sending out orders from some central office. It was the magic of the price system, the impersonal operation of prices that brought them together and got them to cooperate to make this pencil so that you could have it for a trifling sum. That is why the operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
So that's a great story about how everyone is connected, and I think Milton Friedman, the guy who's explaining this, has a really great point there. And we need each other to make something as simple as a pencil. But we also lost connections with products because of this whole system. And I would like to focus now a bit more on that other product, that smartphone that we've been talking about. Is there anyone here who suffers from nomophobia? No one? There's supposed to be 75% of the people suffering from nomophobia, so there's definitely a couple of you here. Nomophobia is no mobile phone phobia, and it's a real existing word. There's people actually suffering from this, and you know the feeling when you go out to work and you feel in your pockets and you think like, oh shit, I forgot my phone. And that's when the anxiety attack starts working. So we have a very specific connection with our phone. We love our phones, we use them, we are with them every day. But how much do we actually know about our phones? Where is it made? Where does it come from? Who made it? Where do they end up if we don't use them anymore? And I'm not sure if you know, but if you look at the bill of materials, that's the list of components that we have in our factories. There's 1,200 components on that list that are made by factories all around the world. And these factories, they have factories that supply them and supply them and supply them. So there's thousands of factories involved into making a phone. And all these factories use minerals that are mined all around the world. There's more than 40 minerals that we use in a mobile phone. And I have a design background, and for me it's really, the intriguing part is that if you look back to the pencil, that pencil basically comes out of the ground. And we can kind of imagine that. But if you imagine a phone, just, taking a phone, hold it in your hand, and imagine that this thing, it starts with just being rocks and stones. And we are able together to make something as complex as a phone. And there's not one single human being that is able to make this product alone. So how does that supply chain look from the perspective of the phone? So here I'm holding a stone in my hand, which I've got from a mine in Congo. And in the last 10, 15 years, that millions of people have died in conflicts related to the mining of these minerals we use in our mobile phones. A lot of these minerals come from mines like this, where guys go deep, 60 meters deep, under the ground. Sometimes they stay there for days in a row to get these minerals out of the mines because we want to have our mobile phones. And this is how it looks at the entrance of the mines. When people get out of the mine, they just have to pay a tax by the rebels, and the rebels can buy guns, and that's the way we're fueling war through actually making our products. So then these minerals, they end up in factories like this, where hundreds and hundreds or thousands of people are working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, for not that much money. And then these phones, they roll off the production belts, and then you have a phone in your hand, and you can't even change the battery. Is there anyone here who has recently replaced the battery of their phones? No one, I guess. Well, you have. Great. You don't have the thinnest, slickest, newest iPhone, probably. No. So what you see with the new high-end phones, because we want to be able to, we want to have like these thin products. We cannot open our phones, and we can't even imagine repairing these phones if we want to repair them ourselves. But the question is, why should we? Because we want to have a new phone every 2-3 years anyway. And I'll show you a little video that kind of stresses this sentiment.
When the new iPhone comes out, some people actually get mad. Why would they make another product I desperately want to buy? Those bastards. It's almost as if the new iPhone somehow ruins the old iPhone, but it doesn't. It's all in your head. In fact, we set a camera out on the street today, and we told people outside to check out the new iPhone 5, which is unavailable so far. So in reality, what they were looking at is the current iPhone 4S that everyone has. And, well, here's how that experiment played out.
The new iPhone 5 just came out today, and we want to know if you'll take a look at it, tell us how it compares to the last iPhone.
I'd love to. Oh, it's way better. Yeah, it's nice. That's definitely noticeably better.
It's a little thinner. Looks like the screen's a little bigger.
Seems a little bit faster.
Yeah, faster, lighter.
Feels heavier.
Feels heavier?
I think so.
A lot lighter than the last one. It's a lot faster as well.
Well, I think you get the point. It goes on and on. So what happens if we don't use these phones anymore? A lot of the phones actually are just tossed in a drawer, the majority of it, and we don't use them anymore. They're not being recycled. But some phones actually go and have a second or third or a fourth life and end up in countries like Ghana, where they don't have proper recycling facilities to take out batteries, for example, that are glued to the inside of the phone because we want to have thin phones. So they end up in dumps like this, where kids take these minerals by burning the phones and taking the minerals out again so that they can earn a bit of money on it. So The question is, do we want this? Because I think the answer to that is fairly easy. No, of course not. But the bigger question is, what can we do about this? And that was the big question we asked ourselves when we thought about setting up a campaign, when we were setting up Fairphone and setting up a campaign around this important story. And we ran into a product, which you see behind me, which I think, I believe is one of the most beautiful products ever made, because it tells a story of industrialization. You won't probably recognize the product as it is here. You probably will with this, but it's a toaster, and this toaster was made by a guy called Thomas Thwaites. And Thomas Thwaites said, he bought a toaster for £2, 2-3 pounds in the shop, and he asked himself, how is it possible that we can make toasters for only 2-3 pounds? And by asking that question, he said, well, you know what? I'm going to go and make my own toaster from the mines, really starting from the origin, and find out what happens in between. And he took that very seriously, so he made this toaster. It worked once, it caught fire, it toasted a toast. So, his lesson was, it's not possible to make a toaster by yourself. But the more valuable lesson was that there's so many things behind that toaster that we got disconnected from. And to us, at that moment, because we wanted to tell that story of the stuff I just showed you, it was kind of like an inspiration, because he said, if Thomas Thwaites can make a toaster, we can make a phone. But we're not going to make a phone like he does, like by ourselves and take all the minerals, because it's impossible. We are going to be part of the economic system, and we're going to try to find out what is needed if we are a company to go through that whole supply chain, and then step by step try to find out what the things are we run into and how we can change them by creating a platform, like you do with, let's say, social platforms or things being in beta. We approach this as an experiment of a platform of people being engaged with the actual development of that phone. So we started in the mines. We went to the mines and we asked around in Congo and said, guys, listen, is there a mine where we can get conflict-free minerals? So we found some mines. We found some companies that wanted to collaborate with us. So we had a mine. So what do you do if you have a mine? Well, you also need customers, because we wanted to be in that, part of that economic system. So I went to an operator in Holland, KPN, and I had a stone in my hand, and I put it on the table, and I said, guys, listen, this is going to be a Fairphone. And if you buy thousands of these already, then you can be launching partner of Fairphone. And the great thing is, in some way, I kind of inspired these guys, and they actually signed a contract based on a non-existing phone by a company that never made a phone before for a price that they didn't even know. So here you have the contracts. They bought 1,000 Fairphones based on a stone. But the great thing is that they actually started communicating about it. They said, we just bought 1,000 Fairphones, so it's real. So what do you do if you have customers and you have a mine? Well, you go to China, because that's where they make phones. So we went to China and we found a factory that actually wanted to make our phone. It was a bit of a weird situation, because we went there with that same stone and we said, guys, listen, we're going to make a phone and we want to set up social programs. We want it in a different way. But we do not have money yet. So in China, that's a bit of a problem, because in China, I haven't experienced a more capitalistic country before, but China is like really hardcore capitalist if it comes to these kind of things. But this factory believed in crowdfunding, because we said, what? We go back with your phone and we go crowdfunding, and once we have the money, then we start production. So that's what we did. We started crowdfunding, and we raised, we sold 10,000 phones in 3 weeks, and then we went on. And we sold actually 25,000 phones in the first 3 months of existence. And these phones, they didn't exist. And we sold out all the phones that didn't exist. And it was pretty scary, because we never made a phone before. Yeah, so we sold 25,000 phones, didn't know how to make phones, and we were 3-4 people, and we had €7.5 million on our bank account. of people that trusted us to make that product. That was a really strong signal from customers that saying, we believe in that change. We believe that we can have an influence on improving the conditions in the supply chain of electronics by supporting you. But that was also the moment where I, as a CEO of a company, from it being a designer and an artist maybe, became an entrepreneur. And I have this really this quote from a guy, a VC in the US, and he says, as a startup CEO, I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 hours and cried. And that's basically what happened when we had that situation. But it was also, besides the fact that was really pressing, it was also cool that risk we were taking was part of the job, and it was also the message that we wanted to get across that things were happening. And we pulled it off. We produced 25,000 phones, and after that we produced another 35,000 phones, Fairphone 1. We had a turnover of 16 million euros in our first 1.5 years of existence. We went from 0 to 16 million revenue without, we were profitable. I can't say that we're profitable still, but at that time it was like, oh yeah, what happened? We're here, but it's not a project. We need to have another phone. So that's when we started investing in our own phone, because that phone was still based on a Chinese model, and we were really looking at the supply chain. So our own phone, which I have here as well, the Fairphone 2, we designed from scratch ourselves. We invested in it, and the reason for that is we wanted to have more control over the supply chain by choosing all the components. But also, one of the great advantages of designing your own phone is that you can design it in a way that you can also think about the environmental impact. The materials you use, the way you set up the processes of making it. But the most important part is, if you want to have an impact on the environment, then the most logical thing to do is to use your products longer. Because it's a simple calculation. If you can use your product, your phone, twice as long, then you only need to produce half the amount of phones. And the biggest footprint of a phone is actually in production. So what we did is that, how do we design a phone against all industry trends that people can actually use longer? And one of the most important aspects, apart from being able to drop it and then it doesn't break, but also is if it breaks over a period of 2 to 5 years, that people can actually change parts themselves, like change the battery, for example. Battery life is normally around 2 to 3 years, so every battery in every phone needs to be changed at a certain point. But what if, for example, the screen breaks? The whole idea is that then people can replace parts themselves, so they can just click out the screen, buy a new screen online, put it in, and off you go. The same goes for everything, every little bit in the phone that can potentially break, which is not connected to another more expensive part, so that we can offer these parts for consumers where they can replace it themselves at a normal price. So apart from that, we're also looking into upgrading stuff like a better camera. We will launch a better camera pretty soon. So the whole idea is to be able to keep that phone in the hands of the consumer for a longer time. But like I said, it's not only about the phone itself and the sustainability aspects of it and the user behavior, but it's also about what happens behind the scenes. So we work with mines in Congo, we work with mines in Rwanda, where we have programs on tin, on tungsten. We work with gold in Peru, that's conflict-free and fair trade certified. So we got that incorporated in the supply chain. We work with social programs in the factories. We have return programs in Ghana where we collect phones. So these are the factory workers of one of the factories we work with. This is a container we got back from Ghana from the collection programs. So, I mean, if you look at the supply chain, and like I said, there's like 1,200 components, and I haven't started this with the idea of being able to improve all of these factories and to make that shift. It's really on that systemic level that we have to create that change. Because if you don't do it on a systemic level, the only thing you could do is to say, well, let's create world peace before we start making Fairphones, because that's basically the challenge you're heading up to. So one of the learnings I got from this whole project is that if you decide to change the system from within, which we did, and become a company with a purpose, with a mission to change that system, you will have to accept the fact that you will also be dictated by the rules of that same system. And that's the irony. One of the first expenses we had as Fairphone was actually bribing the Minister of Communication in Congo. If you do business in China, you have to accept the fact that there's no freedom of association, that there's no labor unions. So how can you call yourself Fairphone if you actually work with factories in China? And these are the dilemmas that every company runs into, but it's really about how do you face these dilemmas. And to me, sustainability is really about accepting the fact and really being able to face these dilemmas as human beings and not as systems and companies that happen to have a profit-driven bottom line. So we still have a very long way to go, but I believe with what we've started, we've created a movement on a very small scale. We're probably the smallest phone company in the world. But we're making steps. And we're not making steps in our own supply chain, we're also telling a story. And that's the power of the storytelling and showing what can be done if you take these little steps as well. And there's a whole bunch of people that actually showed by buying this phone that they believe in that. We've sold over 130,000, 140,000 phones already. So, to conclude, when I started this, I didn't know what I was up to, but I knew one thing. You have to be crazy to do it, because that's what, the thing I got back from everyone that said, like, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, you're crazy, it doesn't work. But that craziness has to be strategically positioned. Don't be just crazy, like, okay, if you have a crazy idea, we're going to build, houses on Mars. It's a crazy idea, but it takes some time, and you have to have a feasible plan. But the naivety that comes with that is very powerful. So be strategically naive, and let others tell you as well what is good, and how you can learn from that, and how you position yourself. Because if you are going to go and want to create an impact with your company, and if you're going to do that within that system that is already, has its rules, you have to be able to put yourself in a vulnerable position, because people will have critique. They will say, well, so you're vegetarian, but if you look at your shoes, you're still wearing leather shoes. It's not as simple as that. The world is not black and white. So the only way to tackle that is to avoid any dogmatism and to really put yourself in a vulnerable position and really engage in a conversation with people that have critique. So that leads me to the last point, and that is really love dilemmas. If you don't love dilemmas, you shouldn't be starting a company, and you shouldn't at all be starting a company in the industry where you want to create change in. Thank you very much.